Hey, Ann, it's Greg Klug, and I just wanted to shoot a quick video. It's much easier just to do this, to me just tell you how it is. You can hear me tell you right from here. I'm not some weirdo or anything. Is that I just wanted to give God the glory and just let Andy and his daughter, I think his name's Rebecca, know that how much his father meant to me. And I can remember the day he died, Charles Stanley, where I was. I was visiting my son and my granddaughter and his fiance in Montana at the time, and my son. I mean, he knew because he used to listen to it with me when he was like. I mean, he's 30 now. He's getting married this weekend, and I'm going to Montana for that. But he when I was walking around, he's like, "Why are you kind of down?" And I was like, "Charles Stanley died today." He goes, "Oh, I know how much he meant to you." And I was like, "Well, I don't know how I could ever relay how much he meant to me. I wouldn't probably be here if it wasn't for him." Now I know Charles would probably just say, well, it was God's in him. But I'll tell you what, if he wasn't speaking the word and the coincidences that happened, I don't think I'd be here. He was the most influential person in my life. That includes everybody that I know of. That I can't see Jesus, but I saw Stanley and I heard him, and I believed him. Well, anyway, I wanted to tell you this miracle that happened, just for you to know that God does miracles. It still does them today. I had struggled with alcohol for decades. It cost me jobs. It cost me a driver's license. I geographically moved. It just was terrible. Okay, I'd get sober and then I'd go back, and I knew I was a Christian and God was blessing me in these crazy little ways. Like He'd answer prayers for things like toilet paper. I know it sounds crazy, but when you're poor and you have nothing and you want to buy your kids ice cream instead of spending money on toilet paper, you'd rather spend it on ice cream because you don't have any money. And that was how it was. It was just like, God, can you give me a toilet paper? And then maybe picnic table. And just all these crazy things. He just answered over and over and over and over and over. But alcohol just seemed to be this thing I just could not. And it wrecked and ruined everything. Well, the miracle I'm going to tell you about, and there was several of them. I mean, every day that I survived my drinking was a miracle. But these were like miracles. God stepped in. Let's put this. I mean, they're just. It's the truth. There's people can verify this stuff. So it got to a point. I had just a little kind of background. I had a Charles Stanley Bible. I started out with a Paraphrase Bible because that's the only one I could understand. I couldn't understand all the other ones. And I'd listen to him at night. I'd literally fall asleep and pray. I'd pray to God at night that He would I wouldn't wake up at all. My life was that bad. And I was even homeless at times, in a car, trying to figure out where I was going to park. Listen to the Charles Stanley. Like, and he would just say, God's timing and God's timing. And it was always just enough hope to just hang on another day sometimes with no hope in sight whatsoever. I mean, there wasn't no hope for me. I mean, I wrecked everything, not only legally and with the criminally and everything. I mean, I had DUIs. I had everything was a mess. I lost my license. I had just absolute mess. So anyway, what I want to share is this is the truth. So I had this Charles Stanley Bible I'd gotten, I don't even know how many years ago. And I had written in it, and I'd highlight it, and I would write in there when God would talk to me, and it was my favorite Bible. Well, anyway, I kind of pulled my life together. I went to AA. I was doing this. I was doing church. I was doing all this stuff. And then I had gotten sober for, I don't know, it was a while. And then I drank again. And then I won't go into all of that, but I felt so bad about it. And the devil always reminds you, I guarantee you, he jumps in there and says, well, maybe you're not saved because, God could have saved you easily. I mean, why are you still drinking? You're probably not a God. You just will kill yourself. You just as well. I mean, you're going to end up killing your kids. You're going to do something stupid. You're going to be locked up forever. You want that? I'd just end your life, man. You got to struggle with 40 years. And how about them hangovers? Aren't they something else? I mean, they were absolutely and brutal. I mean, just stick your fingers down your throat trying to puke. I mean, it was just unbelievable. The torture that alcohol and Satan can do to people's lives. Even though to appearance, and I was a runner. I was literally a runner. Like ran marathons and won some of them. No big ones, but I won some. But the thing is the people I'd run with, they had no idea. And it's like, well, what? Because I was a binge drinker. I didn't drink all the time, but when I did, it was just lights out, man. So anyway, let's get to the miracle, and I can go on and just wanted to share it with you. And that's true. I just want you to know that God is true. He's absolutely there. He doesn't always work in our timing and how we think He should work. And, as Isaiah 55 says, His ways are higher than our ways and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So we have to just have faith and trust that He knows what He's going to do. But sometimes it's easy now to look back, because I haven't had a drink in a long time, and my life's way better. I mean, it's miraculously better. And I preach, and sometimes I don't even know why I do that. That's Jesus Saves the Lost channel. I mean, nobody really has any views. I didn't go to seminary. I didn't do it. I tell God all the time, why you have me do this? I'm not qualified. And I felt like Moses, it's like, well, I'm not qualified. I stutter. I'm not very, I don't even know if I'm verbally, making sense or anything, or if it's scripturally sound or theologically they're going to pick me over. And I'm like, God didn't care much about that, just all my whining about things. He just says, I want you to be obedient and do what I called you to do, Greg. So I've been doing that anyway. But I wanted to tell you about this miracle. It might help somebody that you might run into someday in your life. So, it was as bad as it could possibly get. Now, I had moved into this house after I did a geographical change. This is how bad things were at points. I left my kids at one point. I went from Oregon to Kansas, left my little kids. I want to talk about feel bad. And then I asked God to shut the door in Kansas before I moved back to Oregon. So I moved back to Oregon. And in the meantime, I had to live in the back of my ex-wife's house while all the neighbors, it was like this crazy Greg guys living. It was just... It was just nut. My whole life was just nuts, and God straightened it all out. Let's put it that way. But this story, I'm trying to preface it how bad it was and where my thinking was, even though I knew I was a Christian and I knew God was in my life. So anyway, it got to the point I drank again after all these, decades of problems, and I got in there and I was sitting there and I went and Googled how to kill myself. I did. I went in there, and back in the day, this is a long time, over 20 some years ago, probably, or more now, 20 to 25 years ago. Well, anyway, I was Googling how to kill myself, and one of them came up, drink antifreeze. I was like, well, I got some of that in the garage. And they said it was sweet taste, not too bad. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. Can you believe that? I was like, that doesn't sound too bad. And I was at the end of my rope. I had ruined where I couldn't get a job, and I was doing eBay. And at the time, eBay and PayPal were owned. eBay owned PayPal, whatever. And they would take checks. They would literally take checks. People would buy stuff, take checks. Well, they quit doing that. You couldn't send me checks, and I couldn't have a PayPal account. So anyway, I was losing the way I had to make money. So on top of that, I had nowhere to go. I was getting kicked out of even my ex-wife's house because, she had to pay the bills, and I wasn't paying the bills, and I was like, had nowhere to go. After this point from this house, I went to be living in my car for a period of time. Living in my car. 8 years of college, Dean's honor roll, great runner, living in my car. It's a true story. So when I was there and I was thinking about, the antifreeze thing, well, when I had first moved into this house in Springfield, Oregon, it was on North Street. I can remember that part. I don't remember the address anymore. But I met my next door neighbor. This little old lady had a little bun thing. I don't know, like a little bun thing on her head. And she had a little cross and just kind of neat. And just, I talked to her a couple times over, I don't know, I'd probably been there 6 months maybe, something like that. And, hi, how you doing? She said one time, I'm a real personable person. I really talked about anybody. And she goes, oh yeah, I saw your big TV. I had one of those big TVs from the 80s that were like these big square things that rolled around. They looked like a big box. And she goes, oh yeah, I watched Charles Stanley and you're out the window at your house and watched. So I knew she was a Christian. She knew who Charles Stanley was. And she got and that was basically it. I think I talked to her twice. And in that time that I had lived there, not one person had ever knocked on my door. No, they never knocked on my door. No one ever came to my house, ever. So anyway, like I said, I was feeling bad. I drank again, and I just, when you've lost so many times, and you're a Christian, you don't feel that's working, and you're just tired of fighting all the time. And the hangovers are so bad, I just gave up. And I said, you know what, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to commit suicide, but I just felt there's no way out. So I had my Charles Stanley Bible, and I was just frustrated with God. And I took that Bible, and and I'm sitting at this, like, coffee table, right here, and I take the Bible. I can still remember. I had this Bible, Charles, my favorite Bible. I took it, and I can remember the fire had been going. I had a fireplace that was going, and I chucked it in there. And I was like, well, you can help other people, but you can't help me. Good luck, have a good time. Just done with you. Threw it in the fireplace. Then I'm sitting there at the table, and I'm just going through like my life. It's like, why'd this happen? I did all the things to try to be successful. Well, I didn't ask to be this alcoholic and have this problem, and then just everything, I've lost everything. I mean, when I say I lost everything, I talked to my dad one time in like 30 years. That was about it. And that was just, we're good. That was it. We're good. We're good. That was it. I mean, that's how I separate and ruin everything. It was my fault. But part of it I felt was kind of God's fault because he wasn't helping me. Well, anyway, I got to the point, and I'm sitting there, and I remember I had my phone sitting there, and I was like thinking about it, you know what? And the devil is so convincing. I'm telling you, he can really debate you quite well when you're really in the foot, basically 1 foot in hell and 1 foot out. And I'm like, which I knew I wasn't going to hell, but the misery you're in is like hell. And I'm sitting there looking at the phone, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna. And I had this. I went to the garage, got a thing of antifreeze, and put a cup of antifreeze right on the coffee table. Fire Charles Stanley Bibles in the thing, and I'd listen to him. I mean, I believed it. I believed all this stuff. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and I was looking at the phone, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do this. Have my dad call. Have somebody call. Somebody call. Do something. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I was like, okay, well, make a light flicker. Make a light flicker. Know that you love me, and I won't do this. Nothing. Nothing. So I was thinking about how life is going to be better without Dad. You're not going to end up killing your kids. And they're like, that's good, and you won't have to suffer anymore. And there's no hope. I don't see any hope whatsoever of what I've ruined with the court systems and everything else that I'd ever have any sort of life whatsoever. I mean, I was thoroughly convinced of that. Because it's like society just loves to keep you down. I mean, it's just the truth. And so anyway, got there, and what I did was I put my finger in the antifreeze and I tasted it. And I was like, well, that ain't too bad. This is kind of sweet. I mean, can you think? That's the mental state I was in. So I was like, okay. And nothing flickering, no lights, no nothing. So I said, okay, I'm done. I'm out. I've had enough. So I take the glass and I literally have it up to my mouth, ready to drink it. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, somebody comes and knocks on my door. Just knocking on the door. Absolute true story. God's my witness. And I'm like, who in basically heck is knocking at my door? And I'm like, okay. So I went over and I opened the door, and it's that little old lady from next door. And she goes, I can still remember. She goes, excuse me, sorry to bother you. And she's like 4'10". I mean, she's this little thing. Old lady. I mean, she's the mom. They own, and you can verify it, they're probably dead now. I mean, she was old then, but her son was still alive. And they owned Lovejoy Appliances in Springfield, Oregon. And I believe the son, I don't know if they still have the appliance store, but he owns like a pawn shop. So you look up Lovejoy, that's their name. And they could convince it because he came into the situation, which I'm going to tell you, and he could verify it. Well, anyway, so she goes, knock, 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 and I'm like, and she goes, sorry to bother you, excuse me, sorry to bother you. And I'm like, yeah, you're kind of bothering me. I'm trying to commit suicide here. You kind of bother me. And she goes, do you know CPR? And I'm like, what? CPR? She goes, yeah, I can't remember exactly who it is anymore. I knew at one point it was like the son-in-law or brother-in-law or somebody, and he's dead. And he's not breathing, and he's laying in the front room over here. Can you come over and do CPR? I've called the Springfield ambulance, paramedics, whatever, and they're on their way, but it's a long way out from where they're coming from. And I was like, I did, at one time when I did my geographical change, I had worked in the school system, believe it or not, following this one kid around, and he had a CPR class. So I kind of watched it, and so I go over there. I go over there, I walk in the door, and walk in the house, go through this way, they go down, and they have this little, like a 70s sunken room. You know how those rooms they're not flat, and then they kind of sink down? You kind of have this, I think if I remember, there was a fireplace. I know there was a couch there, because I went and sat on it. But anyway, I got in there, and there's this guy laying there motionless on the ground. And I'm sitting there, so I get on there, and I'm starting to push on his chest, and I'm blowing in his mouth. And it was the weirdest thing ever. I still remember this. The air wouldn't stay in him, kind of like the breath of life. It's kind of weird. And it just funneled back out. So I'm doing that, and doing that. And in the meantime, the paramedics get there. They come in, they're shocking him, they're shooting him with the needle thing of adrenaline or whatever they're doing. And they work on him for a while, and then the son, like I told you, her son comes in from the appliance store, I think it was a pawn shop. I think they had that as well at the time. So he comes in, and this is like wild. And he comes in, and he goes, I can still remember him saying, he goes, well, I don't understand this. He said, like, he's in great health. He'd do anything for anybody. And he's such a good Christian. I just don't get this. What's going on? I mean, he wasn't very old. It wasn't like he's 90. He was like maybe 40 or 50 maybe. And he was like, and I'm like, at that point, I'm sitting on the couch watching all this go on, and everybody's crying and everything else. And the guy died. I mean, literally died. And I'm sitting there watching that, and you know what? And to this day, some 20-some years later, I truly believe that he died, he went to heaven, and said, there's a guy next door, I'm going to be able to use him, and he's got 2 kids, and he's ready to check out right now. But I can use him, but this is going to be something, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I still believe it. I mean, because it made no sense. And I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm watching this, and going, that should have been you, Greg. That should have been you. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and he's crying, and the mortician, or patty, I don't even know what you call it. It was like a Suburban showed up as like a truck, and they come in with a stretcher and the body bag, and put him in the body bag. They come out of the thing, go through the garage, open the garage, put him in the paddy wagon, and drive off. And then I eventually went home. And then, a few weeks later, I told the old lady about it, and I was like, well, this is what was happening, what was going on with me. So anyway, that was a true story, and that was one of them. It was one of the 3 that would blow your mind. From hanging in a closet to trying to shoot myself on Easter Sunday. That's another couple. But anyway, that was the story. So, as my son and my kids can witness this, so the next day, or day after, about then, I remembered that I had thrown that Bible in the fireplace. So I pulled it out, and it's the most interesting thing, and my son can vouch for this. Pulled it out, and it was weird. All the pages on the outside burnt, but the Word of God didn't burn. There was none of the scripture part that burned. It was crazy. I had that. And then, kind of a long story short here, and I'll wrap this up. Don't mean to eat all your time. But the long story short was, I drank again, even though you'd think that would probably been enough. Years, I don't even know if it was a year later, or months. It was literally, I got out of that house, threw all my stuff in storage. I lived in my car for a while, and then I got into this complex, and then somewhere within that time period after that, I still had the Bible going, because obviously it was there, and I took it through the dumpster the next time around. So anyway, same thing. Drank again, mad at God. No, this. I'm gonna wrap this up. It's not good, because this could go on. I mean, it's just a miracle I'm here. So again, it's like that goes on. I'm feeling terrible. This, that, and the other. And I take the Bible and I throw it away in the dumpster, throw it in the trash, throw it outside the dumpster, right? And then the next day or two, I kind of come back, like, God's still there. He's still helping me. I feel bad. I listened to probably your dad, Andy, and then he got me kind of, like, okay, I'll hang in there another day. Even though, by that time I'd ruined everything. I mean, so a lot of times I just couldn't see my kids, and it was like, it was just bad. It was bad everywhere. And so anyway, I threw it out there. I threw it in the dumpster. And about a day or two, I can't remember, I came to and I was like, man, I need to go get that Bible. I need to get my Bible out and dig it out. So walked out there, and it wasn't too far a walk. I didn't even know which apartment I was in. And I walked over and I looked in there, and guess what? They took the trash. It wasn't in there. And to this day, I don't have it. I felt that was one of the most kind of dejected. I just felt terrible. I really just felt terrible. And I walked back and, pretty much just, and God spoke to me about as clear as he's ever spoken to me in my life. And he said, Greg, you can throw away the Bible, but you can't throw away me. And I still remember that. That was just as clear as day. And that helped me so much. It's like God shows up, he kind of usually shows up the last second, but he does show up. So anyway, that's glory for God. That's one of the miracles, and that was a true story. So, and anyway, I thought it'd be easier to tell you. Okay,